Oh, look, we've got a couch, and it appears to be covered in some sort of hair, likely from a dog or a cat or possibly both. Good thing is, we have a vacuum cleaner that should be able to clean this stuff up. And it's called the Eureka Mighty Mite. So let's turn this on, not too loud, but got some noise to it, and we'll clean this up. So, right off the bat, we start off with one of the things that the Mighty Mite does best at, which is, of course, upholstery and above floor cleaning. Something that every straight suction canister should be able to excel at. And the good news is the Mighty Mite does, save for one instance. This machine does have a good amount of power and it does have a good amount of suction. Plenty to use any sort of decent quality upholstery tool, like for example this Dyson unit from a DC-17 and DC-18. This particular machine works great with a straight suction upholstery tool that has a moderate amount of lint pickers in order to actually pull in pet hair and other things off of upholstery. That it does great. Where it fails a little bit is with certain types of turbo tools, where this machine just simply doesn't have enough airflow to properly spin up these tools. Despite these tools working just fine on machines that have good suction, and yet by other vacuum YouTubers are often referred to as not having enough airflow. This actually has less airflow than those machines, so it's not able to adequately spin turbo brushes from competing companies like Hoover and Dyson, or technically Miele as well, or Sebo, since these tools are very similar. But if you use a straight suction attachment, again, the primary use of this machine, it does still excel. So that is really good. So right off the bat, demoing one of the first things about the Mighty Mite that it excels at: upholstery cleaning, dusting, all sorts of stuff like that, provided you replace the attachments, because the default combination dusting brush and upholstery tool that this machine comes with, of which I do not have, it performs very terribly. And I wish I could actually show you an example, but I've been struggling to actually find an example of one of those attachments to purchase for this review, and that's part of the reason why I put it off for so long, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, so we went ahead and proceeded on anyways. The upholstery slash dusting combo tool with the two different plugs that you can use each side on is terrible, and you should simply replace those attachments. But since this uses an 1¼ fitting, any universal 1¼ fitting attachments do work on the Mighty Might, and that makes it very easy to adapt this to any other attachments that work better, even if some, like the air-powered turbo brushes, struggle a little bit with this machine. That being said, the crevice tool, which stores neatly on the back of the handle of the machine, which I'll show in a second where that stores, is solid. It's got a little spot right here where it allows a bit of suction bleed off, very similar to a lot of the Dysons, and it's a very simple crevice tool. There's not really much to say about it. It does the job, it's plenty long, and it gets the job done. So that I'm perfectly happy with. And one nice thing about this machine is that even if you don't use an attachment that has suction bleed off on itself, there is a little dial right here that you can twist to open up the suction. It reminds me a lot of the dial on the floor nozzles for a lot of Phantom floor tools. So you've got that right there, and it works very well. So because of the versatility with the amount of attachments you can use, and the suction control, and the fact that this is a standard wire reinforced hose, it is not a stretch hose, so you don't have to worry about this pulling back as a result of the suction. And the way this is designed, you can place it on stairs and actually go up the stairs, and you can even carry it via the handle that's located on the top of the machine. So right here, we've got our carrying handle, and we've got a little slot right up there to store the crevice tool in. And if you had the combination dusting brush and upholstery tool, it would fit right in here. Now this particular model does have a slot for a HEPA filter, but any of the newer ones you find are not going to have this slot. And for the sake of usage and review, I've been explicitly using this without the HEPA filter installed, because all the units of this that you would buy today would not have the option to have a HEPA filter fitted to it. All these molding marks were completely removed, so there is no way to use those on the current generation Mighty Mites, which is probably the biggest reason to stay away from this, was that downgrade in filtration. But the good news is they do make HEPA bags for these now, and I highly recommend getting those, because that does make a big difference. I will link some better quality bags in the description if I can find them, but of course the standard paper ones do work in a pinch, but filtration's not going to be the best. I actually, as a torture test, I used it to clean up some plaster dust that had actually fallen, as the room where I keep my vacuums upstairs is disintegrating and will not be fixed by the person who owns this house. So I have elected to clean up the debris with this Mighty Mite, despite the fact that it's not designed to, and you shouldn't do that. I don't recommend it. That's definitely a shop vacs task, but I wanted to torture this thing, and it handled itself just fine. It did eventually lose suction. I had to replace the bag a bit prematurely, but other than that, it handled itself just fine. So this machine can handle a beating, but I don't recommend beating it up. There's no real reason to, as it serves domestic purposes just fine. I've even used this machine over the last several years that I've had it, or several months I should say, I don't think I've had this for years yet, as my main vacuum that I use to clean out other vacuums, or as many people refer to it as a bench vac. Despite the fact that I don't actually use the workbench that I have set up in my basement, I do practically use this for bench vac purposes, cleaning out other machines, as there's no cyclone or bagless system to get infested with dust from other machines. It's simply a bag that I can throw away after it gets full. So it has been serving that purpose very well. There's definitely things that I really like about it and things I don't like, and we'll discuss those in this review. But at the end of the day, given how inexpensive this machine is, roughly around $80, you really can't complain about many of the drawbacks of this machine, because a lot of that does come from needing to hit a price point. So there is definitely a grain of salt that you should take with the complaints that I do make later on in this video. Right off the bat, things I like. It's very lightweight. I actually like the fact that it does not contain any sort of cord winder. Most canisters have a cord winder. This does not. You have manual cord hooks on the top and bottom that you wind the cord up. Now, that may sound like an inconvenience, but when you realize the fact that it's one less thing that can break, because one of the biggest reasons why I don't like canisters in many scenarios is I don't like cord reels. It's just one other thing that can break and get in the way of you being able to use the cable. Cord hooks are much more effective. They get the job done, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really add a lot of time to the vacuuming experience. As I know, a lot of people, if we're being honest, they don't wrap up the cords anyways. They just toss the thing in a closet and forget about it. So what's the point of a cord reel anyways if you're not going to use it? This machine doesn't have that. It's one less thing to break. You have the entire length of cord at your disposal. And while the cord on the newer models is a lot shorter than this, which I don't like, there are models from Bissell Big Green and Sanitaire that are modeled very similar to these machines that have longer cords. So those are an option if you want a version of this machine that's a little bit more expensive, but has a little bit more creature comforts in terms of attachment quality and cord length. But this is the consumer version we're reviewing today. So just a note, that is a complaint, but since there is no cord winder, it's very easy to add an extension cord to this. Just make sure you get one that's properly rated for all the amps and voltage that this pulls. You don't want to use an improper extension cord, as that can cause problems with the machine and the cable, and potentially, if you're really unlucky, start a fire. But this particular machine, while it does disappoint a bit in cord length, it does make up for that in hose length. As you can see, while the hose is not stretchy, it has plenty of length to it. Even if it gets wrapped around the machine, I can still use it frequently, and I don't find the hose length getting in the way. And unlike a lot of the Kenmore canisters that I've used in the past, the hose is very lightweight. It's not bulky at all, and it's also, since it's not a stretch hose, much easier to wash out, since there's no crevices that expand in order for moisture and gunk to get stuck into. So that's a nice feature as well. As you can see, I've been a little bit hard on this machine. I don't keep it all shiny and clean like I do a lot of my other machines, because this is essentially a work vacuum. I don't use it for it to be pretty. Whenever I want a canister vacuum to use around the house that I want to be pretty and keep in good condition, that's what I use my Bissell Zing for, which that machine I recommend equally as much as I recommend the Mighty Mite. But the fact that I've chosen to use the Mighty Mite over the Zing in most instances, I think that does point to which one I prefer. But both are excellent choices. The Zing's even a couple bucks cheaper. But again, the hose on this is great, no complaints there. And on this particular unit, it's nice and quiet, although there are newer versions of this that have a much louder and whinier motor. Unfortunately, that's just a sign of the times. Pretty much every budget vacuum has much smaller, much lower amperage motors that are much whinier and more painful to actually listen to. We've seen this from every company, Eureka, Bissell, Hoover, Shark. It's just something that happens. So if you're upgrading from an older model, just note that the newer models lack the HEPA filter slot and also have whinier motors, but otherwise are very, very similar in terms of features and performance. The actual amperage doesn't affect the suction or clean performance all that much. I have used one of the newer units. It's very, very similar in terms of experience and performance. Now, this thing is nice and lightweight, despite the fact that it is mighty. It is not bulky. It's very lightweight. Of course, like any bagged machine or even bagless machine, the more dirt you fill up in it, that's obviously going to add to the weight. If you have the cord wrapped around, it's going to add a couple pounds as well. So this particular machine is very lightweight. I haven't actually weighed this on a scale yet, but it has a nice carrying handle, so if you want to actually hold this and vacuum your above the floor areas, that is an option. This machine normally comes with 2 wands and a floor tool, sometimes even 3 wands, so that gives you plenty of reach. Of course, I could complain about the wands not being telescopic, but at this price range, it's just not fair to complain about that sort of thing, so I will refrain from doing so. Now, some people may complain about the wands being metal, but again, I don't see any practical purpose to make wands metal, just in general, even regardless of price point. It just adds weight, bulk, and expense to the product unnecessarily. And of course, there's a problem that if they're not properly plasticed off at the ends, then you can scratch your furniture and all that stuff, which you can do anyways with metal. So, plastic wands, I don't have them here. They are upstairs, but they work as you'd expect. And again, 1.25 inch, so you can add whatever set of wands you want to this, so you choose. So if you want to purchase a telescoping extension wand, purchase a better quality floor nozzle, purchase smaller tools that you want to use instead, those are all options with this machine. Don't let the budget price point scare you off if you want something a little bit nicer. If this serves your purpose and you're not worried about filtration, then it's definitely an option. And if you are worried about filtration, you may want to step up to something like a budget level Miele. But from this price point, less than $100, even around $100 for some upgraded models, it serves its purpose. It's very simple. I mentioned the cord on the bottom. You've got 2 wheels on the back and a caster on the front that moves a little bit. It doesn't move a whole lot, but it's enough to drive the machine. These wheels are, of course, just not really actual wheels. There's no bearings. It's just plastic on plastic. Again, not the best quality, but for the price point, you can't really complain about that sort of thing. Now, as far as floor performance with this machine, the head that it comes with does have the ability to clean both carpets and bare floors. Although it obviously is not going to be suitable for wall-to-wall carpeting or anything but the thinnest of thin area rugs, it does function on carpets, and it is okay to push and pull. It's definitely much better than a lot of other units at being able to be pushed on carpet, even with suction going through it. Its design is actually very friendly to certain types of carpeting, and despite that, it still manages to roll just fine on bare floors as well, with a little squeegee on the back to seal in any suction, and a nice opening up front to let large debris through. Of course, it's still going to struggle with some large debris, but the nice thing is it's such a lightweight straight suction head, you can just pick it up and set it down on the debris and have it suck it up. It's excellent for bare floors, and it's one of the machines that I generally tend to go to whenever I'm vacuuming bare floors if I want to use a straight suction machine. Now, there are benefits and drawbacks to both using a straight suction machine on bare floors and a machine with a soft roller like the Dyson cordless machines or the Shark Dual Clean system, but they in of themselves have their own benefits and drawbacks. Straight suction is a lot more straightforward, no pun intended, and that does allow it to work very effectively on bare floors. Although it doesn't get all the dust off of bare floors in the same way that soft rollers do, it still does great at picking up any amount of debris you'd have to get. Cat litter, crumbs, pieces of pet food. It actually excels at that compared to a lot of other machines, both upright and canister. So that, of course, gets a thumbs up as well. Especially because, again, if you didn't like the included floor tool, it's 1.25 inch. You can add pretty much any other floor tool to it, and any ones that don't fit, you can find adapters really easily as well. So it's pretty much as good as it gets on bare floor performance. The only real problem with it on bare floors is the fact that these hard plastic wheels, if you do let the machine roll behind you, will scratch up your floors. That's the biggest problem. This is not smooth. It will scratch your floors unless you have scratch resistant floors, or of course you pick up the machine and elect to carry it while you use it on bare floors. That would be a situation where it in fact would not scratch bare floors. So all in all, this machine is excellent for the price, and there really isn't much else to say about it because it is such a simplistic machine. If I had to recommend possible upgrades for an upgraded SKU of this, obviously HEPA filter, HEPA bag, better quality seals on the system. Yeah, again, it has suction control, maybe a motor control speed would be kind of nice. A longer cord, of course, nicer quality wheels, of course, and maybe even a better included attachment set. But the fact that the fundamentals on this are strong, it cleans well, it performs well, it's not super loud, it does the job. The fact that it does all that at this price point is definitely something to commend. So, Eureka, this machine obviously has easily led the test of time. This machine came out in the early to mid 80s, and there's still one variant or another of this on the market even after Eureka changed hands to what is now the company owned by Midea. This is the only machine that has survived the Midea takeover of Eureka. And it's also, along with the budget airspeed, pretty much the only relevant Eureka in the US market. So that definitely deserves it some points as well. This machine is excellent, and for the price point, you really can't do much better. There are other options out there like a Bissell Zing, or if you want to spend a couple more bucks, there's options like the very basic Miele, I forgot what it was called, Miele C1, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But there are entry-level Mieles you can get for about 400 bucks. Of course, those are way more expensive than this, but there's a pretty decent gap from machines like that. There's also the Simplicity Jill, which is the upgraded version of the Bissell Zing, but effectively the same machine. So, along with the Zing, this is really one of the best machines you can get as a straight suction machine for bare floors. If you're living in an apartment or something that doesn't require a lot of cord length, yet you have mostly bare floors and only a couple very thin area rugs, this or the Bissell Zing are definitely really good fits. And I think for most people, the Mighty might be preferable. But of course, that will be up to your opinion. At some point in the future, after I review the Zing independently, I will do a video comparing the two to help you decide which one is right for you. But either one of these are great options. The Mighty Might, of course, gets my recommendation, as does the Zing, which will get its own review later this year. So anyways, let me know your thoughts on the Eureka Boss Mighty Might and its various offshoots and iterations. This machine gets a big thumbs up from us here at Intelitech Studios, and by us, I mean just me, because I'm the only one who runs this channel and is ever on it. But this machine definitely gets a thumbs up. For the price, I would definitely say it's a 9 out of 10. If I had to factor in value as a as a bullet point. If I didn't, I still would give it a solid rating, even if price isn't an option for you. It's a great machine. Even if you have a nicer machine, just to kind of be able to throw around and beat up a little bit and not really have to care about. So it's definitely a solid machine. I know a lot of people who use these on site as well because there's no cord hook to break. They're easy to service. The bags are all over the place. They're super simple, 1.25" fitting. The ability to carry it, all that stuff helps it in commercial environments and domestic environments as well. So I think I mentioned pretty much all there is to say about this. Again, it gets a glowing review from me, and I do recommend that you purchase this machine if you're looking for a straight suction canister for under $100. I will link this in the video description, and I will attempt to link the Sanitaire and Big Green commercial versions of this machine as well if they are in stock. Anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out with my full in-depth review of the Eureka Boss Mighty Mite. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace.